maybe that you do in your life, but it requires money, and that's what companies do. They make money. And a publicly traded company has to increase shareholder value, and oh, by the way, not just increase shareholder value, but increase it at a competitive rate against those companies where they could otherwise put their money. This is sort of a paraphrase, this remember, from the annual report to the letter to the shareholder, the letter to the annual report of Coca-Cola in 1984 from Roberto Goizueta, who was the chairman of Coca-Cola at the time, is since deceased. Consistent value creation is the essence of job security. It's what provides the dollars for corporate philanthropy, employee development, etc. A poorly performing company can't sustain jobs. It can't provide employees the opportunity to develop, and it sure can't provide corporate philanthropy. So in effect, what I'm saying here is that creating value is not necessarily just a selfish thing to do for shareholders. It's really a selfish thing to do for yourselves. If you weren't a shareholder, the reason this is important to create value is it's what provides job security. It's what provides the bucks for us to throw things like Take a Break. It's what funds things like Top Gun. It's what pays the comp plan. I mean, ultimately, this is what it's about. Otherwise, if we don't, Gordon Gekko is waiting for us. I had a boss when I was about 19, and I was significantly overpaid. And I remember what he told me because I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, geez, did I get away with one here? I'm making a lot of money. And he sat me down one day and said, Brad, the one thing you're going to always want to remember is figure out a way to make yourself irreplaceable. So in effect, what he was saying is figure out a way to create enough value for me, since I'm the one paying your paychecks, that you're always employable. Just always figure out a way for me to say, geez, for every dollar I spend on you, I'm getting a significant amount of value, so I don't ever want to lose that person. That's the essence of job security. It's really being employable and generating shareholder value. So what's shareholder value? If you just wanted to do the math, it's the share price times the number of shares outstanding. That's the market value of the company. The increase in shareholder value is any incremental increase in the market value minus the new investment that we put in comes up with a number called MVA, or market value added. You have a couple of handouts in your binders that you'll see behind this that are for your reading. One is from Fortune magazine. It's called The Greatest Wealth Creators. The other article is, it's actually off of a website, but it's from the University of Helsinki, and he talks about why EVA, or what we're going to talk about today, creating shareholder value, is also a really important and really helpful measure for small businesses, even if they're not publicly traded. So you'll see that, and hopefully you'll have a chance to look at it. So you look at MVA and you say, this is a great way to run the company. Let's just do it. There's only one problem. We have a measurement problem. While MVA, or market value added, is the ultimate measure of shareholder wealth creation, it's not practical as an internal measurement for you and me and our ability to run our business day to day. The reason is the operating units, BLD, doesn't have a share price, doesn't necessarily have a market value that's determined by the outside market. We're not publicly traded. We're a wholly owned subsidiary of the Business Banking Group, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Wells Fargo, which is publicly traded. Market values are subject in the short run to significant and wild swings based on things outside of our control in the short run. So what do? The best proxy for MVA is net income after capital charge. Net income after capital charge is the measure of our profit as a company or as a business unit or even at the product level. So even delivering business deposits or business loans, we can measure it and subtract the cost of all capital employed. In effect, what it says is it's our net profit, and then we've added another expense line to the income statement that pays back our shareholders for the use of their capital. So it backs that out, and what we come up with is our real profit. It's also referred to as EVA when you go out and read articles, as economic value added or economic profits. That's the formula. We'll spend a lot more time on it as we go forward and how it actually relates to you. A couple of asides. You just heard a new term, I know a lot of you, NIAC. And to make you feel a little bit better, hopefully, if you're at all confused, this is a true story. I thought that Nyack was a city in Alaska. So, you know, if I thought that initially, you'll be able to get it. I'm also the same person that when I was a new CLO, I was out, and I ended up being a pretty good CLO by the old measures, you know, back when I walked to school in snowshoes and all that kind of stuff. And initially, I was out declining real estate loans for a lack of secondary. So If I could have done that, and I can do this, trust me, you'll pick it up, and it's not that tough. This whole issue of EVA, the reason that we don't use EVA, EVA and NIAC are the same thing. So you might ask the question, why don't we use EVA? EVA, actually, there's a consulting firm called Stern Stewart, and they trademarked the term. So if we go around and say EVA, 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 you hear a cash register somewhere going ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching for Stern Stewart. One other thing, EVA, Stern Stewart didn't invent it. They didn't create it. I mean, essentially, when you look at this, you could go to the Bible. You know, Jesus talked about the parable of the talents. You know, I'm going to give you something. What are you going to give me back? It's as old as that. Roberto Goizueta, if you read the book, I'd Like the World to Buy a Coke, you'll find that one of the things that he did to revolutionize Coca-Cola was he started charging for capital out to the business units. Because essentially, capital doesn't come from budgets. It comes from shareholders. And so he said, I'm going to charge for that capital so that each business unit is competitive. And they're essentially covering their cost. So in Coca-Cola, when they employed it, they have since become one of the 3 greatest wealth-creating companies ever, or at least since they started measuring it. Coca-Cola, Microsoft, and GE. And it's in that article, by the way. So this is the relationship of NIAC to market value added. If a business unit creates NIAC, ultimately it increases shareholder value, which increases market value, and increases market value added for the shareholders. One thing to understand is this is a long-term relationship. A lot of things can happen in the short term. You can cut corners in the short term to boost income. People have seen that. And we're going to talk about the problem with some measurements versus NIAC, but it's not. There is a relationship between NIAC and market value added. It doesn't mean just because you generate $1 of NIAC, you get a lift in your stock price necessarily, but over the longer term, there is a proven relationship between the two that one will predict the other, and you'll see that in just a second. In fact, this underlies, if you read Warren Buffett's The Buffett Way or all the talk about value investing, this is very much kind of the thinking that goes on in value investing. It's all about cash flows. The problem with traditional performance measures, if you look at these, return on assets, ROE, net income, earnings per share, is none of them really answer the question whether we're increasing the value of a stockholder's investment. So you begin to ask the question, what is the measure that there's a correlation? Because if you can't predict what's going to happen to the share price, why use a particular measurement system? All of these are accrual-based accounting measures, as you know. And there's in one of the books that's on the reading list, Creating Shareholder Value by Alfred Rappaport, he has a phrase in there that says, cash is a fact and profit is an opinion. And I think you know, based on what you can do with different accounting treatments, based on how you value inventory. All of these, the problem with traditional accounting measures is that they don't factor time value of money. They don't account for investment, because essentially if a stockholder gives you equity, it's, you don't see a charge on the income statement. So it's free. It doesn't account for that. So by going to something we're looking for a measure that has a strong correlation with market value added. A reminder for those of you, it's been a while since you've been in a statistics class, this is just a graphical representation of what correlation looks like. A weak correlation, if you look up here, it might be hard to see, this is a correlation of 0.06, which means along the x-axis and the y-axis, one doesn't necessarily predict the other. An almost perfect relationship is one where x and y, you can predict one against the other based on a correlation of somewhere near 1. And the reason that I wanted to show you this is based on the traditional measures that are employed today. Return on assets, return on equity, net income, EPS. You'll notice down here this 0.1. See this 0.4? 0.9 or 1 is way out here. So essentially what this says is there's almost no relationship. So what's the right measure? Sorry. Got to go back a couple. If you throw NIAC on this, you see there's a significant difference. So that when you can have an internal measure, because what we've been really searching for in these first few minutes is what's the right internal measure for us to use as a company that's predictive of what's going to lift market value added. And you can see NIAC, when compared to all the other measures,